I went to the NPR studio. I went to the NPR studio in Los Angeles. We were supposed to do this in New York in person, but unfortunately we couldn't do it in New York in person because like I was, filming some other stuff. I think she wasn't there at the time that I was there. In any case, we did it. It's been a minute. It's a 42-minute conversation. It was pretty good. I hope it's like, I love doing these sorts of podcasts because it's like great to show your family members or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like when I go on, I don't know, like a bro podcast, right? That's good for all the bros. You can show your bro friends. When I go on NPR, you can show your older liberal moms and stuff like that. But yeah, we did this.
He is a hugely popular Twitch streamer who talks about progressive politics with his more than 2.9 million followers. He's covered topics ranging from the war in Gaza to immigration and even the New York City mayoral race. He also has hugely loyal fans. Here's just some of the things they say about him. Shaka143 of TikTok says, "Tell him, Habibi." Swept the Leg from Reddit says, he is a himbo gateway drug to leftist thought. And lil.gay.ray from Instagram says, not to be dramatic, but I'd die for this man, LOL. And Hasan, I don't know if I've ever heard the term himbo gateway drug before. Is that how you describe yourself?
Yeah, I think that nails it, I guess. What is this? The description, not to be dramatic, but would you die for Hasan Piker? For some of you, Hasan Piker needs no introduction. He's one of the leading voices in progressive political content online, boasting a massive 2.9 million followers on Twitch alone. He's polarizing, charismatic, and kind of a bro, and his fans love him. Just take his Instagram comment, for example. Not to be dramatic, but I'd die for this man, lol. With all the discourse about young men flocking to the political right because of online commentators like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, some have started asking if Piker is the Joe Rogan of the left. A fan on TikTok did refer to Piker as the himbo gateway drug to leftist thought. Just gateway drug to empathy.
Gateway drug to empathy.
A himbo format.
I will say, I do think that this is like a super useful example to get into something else that is kind of going on. Like, you haven't just gotten attention for your politics. There's also been a lot of talk about your specific brand.
Dude, Schizo Abe, dying for an online commentator is not revolutionary. Yeah, man, it's a joke. I don't know if you know this, but like, you know what's revolutionary? Taking an Instagram comment seriously. That is the peak revolutionary form right there.
Masculinity. Earlier this year, you were profiled by the New York Times, and that headline was really something.
I think the original headline was Progressive Mind in a MAGA Body. That's what it was.
Yes, you are correct. The headline was Progressive Hasan Piker, a progressive mind in a MAGA body. Which, I have to ask, like, what is a MAGA body? Like,
I don't know.
Do you know what that is?
No, I believe that they were trying to say that, like, this is the manosphere, and there's a lot of content creators in the manosphere that, like, work out. And I think that's what they were trying to point to. But, like, when you invoke the MAGA body, I don't think most people, New York Times readers or not, are going to look at that and think like a very brolic guy. They're going to think of, I don't know, someone like a normal American, the average American. The New York Times was specifically, I think, trying to invoke the image of this this masculine man who works out quite a bit.
I find it interesting, perhaps the everyday person might think of a MAGA body as like, an everyday person's physique. Yet, it sounds like that headline kind of tied masculinity to a certain type of physique, or masculinity to MAGA in a really specific way.
For sure. I think that's deliberate, and I think it's wrong. Which, like, I don't think masculinity is associated with MAGA. I don't even think masculinity is necessarily associated with working out. I think what we consider to be masculine is just confidence. That's what I believe is like the number one mistake that many people make when talking about masculinity. It's just an outward expression of confidence and, like, I guess, a demonstration of leadership skills. That's what most of these people are pointing to when they talk about being alpha or being masculine in general, like a lot of these people online. women can't be confident. No, first of all, women can be masculine as well. And you're misunderstanding my point. I'm not saying this is the correct interpretation of masculinity. I'm saying that what people consider to be masculine values is basically just a demonstration of confidence. Okay? Like, whenever someone says, "Oh, I'm alpha," like, the value that they're describing with that terminology is simply being confident. That's it. And it's ironic because none of those people are actually confident. Like, if you have to consistently relitigate how confident you are, how macho you are, how masculine you are, you probably aren't that, and you're insecure about it, and that's why you're making up for that insecurity by really hamming it up and consistently explaining to people how masculine you are or how alpha you are. That's it. If you got to keep telling people you're that, then you don't have it. You ain't that.
The greatest rule of thumb, of course, is that if you have to call yourself masculine or alpha, then you probably do not exhibit those qualities in general.
You talk a lot about working out. You also like video games. And on top of all of that, you talk about politics on the internet. But these are very much right now activities associated with bro culture. Bros, I think, are often stereotypically considered to be conservative. Why do you think like these activities, like working out, video games, etc., why do you think they are so conservative coded?
I wouldn't say they're necessarily conservative coded. I would just simply say that they are easier to be branded as apolitical. I mean, there's a very funny, long-standing joke or meme in the gaming sphere where people will say, "Oh, why do you have politics in my video games?" Like, get politics out of my video games is like this rallying cry from Gamergate onward, and it usually is deployed at any video game that has like a black female protagonist, and then immediately that's like being considered as political. It's like the two genders, white man and political, and these guys will unironically say things like Call of Duty is not political, or Call of Duty wasn't political until there was like a black woman in it. Yeah, they just don't understand that like Call of Duty has of course always been political. I mean, it's sometimes making a criticism of American imperialism. In other instances, it's quite literally defending American imperialism, but it's never not political. It's just that a lot of guys don't read it as politics when it's something that they agree with or aren't putting much thought into. And I think that's what happens in a lot of these spaces for a lot of these hobbies, is that we cede territory to right-wing actors because they get to angle it as though they're above the interests of politics. Don't try to read too much into this thing, just enjoy it. Which is interesting because I kind of do that as well. Like, I say that same thing every now and then. Like, I had Dr. Abdul El Sayed on yesterday. He's running for senator in Michigan, in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
He's great. He's also kind of a bro himself. He loves working out.
I've seen him post about it online for sure.
Yeah. And we were talking, and he said something. He was like, I felt bad. I felt uncomfortable, but I really like Top Gun. And I was like, dude, you don't have to say that. Like, yeah, it was a good movie, Sure, it's a movie about American imperialism, but like, it's a good movie. Sometimes it's okay to just be like, I like this. This is funny. I like this movie. This is a good movie. It was well shot.
But I wonder, like, his hesitation to embrace or even to openly embrace, like, his love of Top Gun with him, and also sometimes other politicians or other public figures, there is this desire to not be associated with things that kind of bro culture. Do you think that there is almost like some, I don't know, like some residue there, or something that people don't want to touch or don't want to like associate themselves with right now in terms of like bros in general?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is still a heavy focus on the aesthetics for a lot of politicians on the liberal side of things, on the Democratic Party side of things, and I think that heavy focus on the optics of it all makes people a lot more careful when bracketing themselves in a certain way. I think that if they were more policy focused, it wouldn't really matter necessarily whether they are coming in this like bro-y veneer or not. But I think what's most important is to just be honest and be earnest and be who you are. That's what I am, at least. And that's why it's always funny when, the New York Times is writing about me and they ask me like, do you feel like this is a carefully crafted, perfectly balanced out character that you've created? And it's like, no, it's just, no, I just grew up playing video games. I like playing basketball. I like competitive sports. And I like working out. This is just who I am.
A lot of young guys have the same interests and end up going down another political pipeline. And you came out progressive. Like, what kind of caused your political development to?
When was this filmed? This was a while. It was like a month ago, maybe. It was a while back. We were supposed to originally do this in New York when I was in New York, but we couldn't because she wasn't in New York. We were supposed to do this in we were supposed to conduct this interview in person, but we didn't get to do it.
Lean toward progressivism.
I mean, growing up in Turkey, I always had a much more liberal slant, I would say, especially because I saw the formation of the Erdogan coalition, the Erdogan government, and I saw the repressive nature of conservatism. One of my first interactions with government repression in general, was when Recep Tayyip Erdogan sued one of the cartoon newspapers that I used to read with political satire. And that's when I was like, whoa, this is messed up. I don't really like this guy. Outside of that, I growing up in Turkey, always had an anti-imperialist slant.
How much of the current men's rights movement, which are associated with hate groups, only have oxygen because leftists don't take that space? No, I don't think it's because leftists don't take that space. I mean, I do. Here's what I think about leftists not being able to, quote unquote, take up space. If you are on the left, on the political left, you are not being represented by party politics. You're not being represented by the liberal media ecosystem. You are, as a matter of fact, considered antagonistic to both the left flank of media. This isn't to say that they're leftists, liberals, right? And certainly considered public enemy number one to the right flank of the media. This creates an environment where you're catching it from both ends and you're just basically on an island by yourself. Okay? Right-wingers, no matter how far right they are, can still be elevated by and represented by the right flank of media. Okay? That's the difference. This is precisely the reason why you don't see a lot of leftist commentary in these spaces, because right-wing commentary, no matter how far right, still gets elevated all the way up to Fox News. There is a closeness to what even someone like Nicholas Fuentes is saying with someone like the Fox and Friends people. You know what I mean? Like, they are on the same. They're one might be a little bit more extreme than the other, right? And there are certainly some issues like blaming Jews, where they're completely at odds with one another. But overall, their worldview is close to one another. There's a closeness to it. Whereas for liberals don't want even basic social safety net expansion. Like liberals in the media, by design, as a consequence of their job, as a consequence of what their role is in society, do not even want to present modest expansion of these social safety nets. And this is precisely the reason why people like Tucker Carlson get to flood the marketplace with commentary on Gaza, for example. Anti-Zionists who are on the left, anti-imperialist, anti-Zionists, have been talking about this issue for decades, myself included. But the most prominent voices in American discourse right now, American political discourse right now, on what Israel is doing in Gaza are all right-wingers, and that is by design. The reason why it's all right-wingers isn't just because the media wants or is more comfortable with right-wing voices as opposed to leftist voices. That plays a role in it. But I think that major motivation from even liberal outlets in general that will every now and then with sympathetic people that work in places like NPR, such as this interview, right? They'll drip feed people like myself into these top rosters and my worldview into these platforms. But I will never have the same placement as Scott Jennings, right? or someone who has my politics will never have the same consistent placement on liberal outlets in a way where even like the Podjohns can get it. You will never see Tucker Carlson's position on Israel on Fox News. Yes, but also Tucker Carlson came from Fox News, right? Like he is the perfect example of this, where like he already is an OG Fox News demon. He is a Fox News manufactured creation. Like they made Tucker Carlson. They gave him the largest platform he could possibly have, and then he took that influence and he took that platform, and now he can do stuff on the independent side, and he still carries a lot of weight with his voice. This is what happens. This is usually what happens. This is how right-wing voices are so much more prominent than left-wing voices, even on the independent media side. Many of the right-wing voices are also directly funded by the same institutional donors to the Republican Party, because there's an ideological commitment to a project, right? We've said this before. I talk about this all the time, but it's like, if you want to do a real left-wing broadcast, it has to be grassroots, because no institutional donor is ever going to fund a media initiative that revolves around dismantling a system that they benefit from, a system that they have designed, a system that they are purposefully participating in. Like, what billionaire is going to be like, I'm going to give $100 million to a guy that says billionaires shouldn't exist? That's not going to happen. So leftist voices have to create a grassroots movement. There are not that many Engelses out there, is what I'm saying. Okay. It's not common. And the closest you can get to that is a guy like George Soros, and his foundation is not leftist at all. It's very much liberal. And liberalism is always going to be antagonistic to leftist values and leftist politics. When push comes to shove, and there's an issue that hurts their bottom line, liberals are going to openly present the left as an antagonist, openly present the left and left momentum as a spoiler.
Which is a given usually for people on that side of the planet who are privy to the negative consequences of American empire, who get to experience it firsthand, or at least secondhand. But when I came to the United States of America, I think that's what was like such a radicalizing moment for me. It was healthcare. It was the ambulance bill that I got when I was in college. I was like, this is insane.
What happened? If you can share. If not, understandable.
I just blacked out. I didn't call the ambulance myself. I just woke up at the hospital, and then I saw the bill, and I was like, I can't believe it. And I already had this attitude that a social democracy is perhaps the best possible way to go about things, because I came from Turkey. I saw the importance of public education, free public college, and a nationalized healthcare system. Even if it's not the best funded, it's still really good that it exists, right? That's the attitude that I had. And then when I saw private healthcare here, I was like, oh, it's over. This is the worst thing on the planet. We need to put an end to this immediately. Whoever is doing this, they need to stop, was my initial attitude.
I could see how that would be a complete shock if it's something you never had to think about before. Yeah. And you call an ambulance to pick you up in an emergency in a time of need, and then suddenly you're like, oh, this costs money. But I don't think it's something that anybody wants to think about when they're in like a low moment like that.
Yeah, and also I'll admit, like, I think I was too well educated at that point to be duped by some dude online being like, that's because of Mexicans that you have to pay for this ambulance. But I do think that in that moment of weakness, in that moment of anger and resentment, if there was someone out there who was charismatic and I wasn't very well read, and I did not know that there was an alternative readily available, like a public healthcare system was readily available that I had seen work in a much poorer country like Turkey, I probably would be like, I'm really pissed off. Who else is pissed off with me? And if you got a dude on YouTube saying, Yeah, I'm pissed off too. You know why we're pissed off though? Because the Democrats care about Mexicans and Guatemalans and trans people, and you should be pissed off about that. That's weird, right? And all of that combined, I think, creates this perfect powder keg where young men who are already predisposed to reactionary tendencies find themselves swept away, desperate for a sense of community, desperate for an identity. They find themselves in right-wing circles, and they unironically wear it as a brand, where they think that being politically right-wing is a way to demonstrate your machismo, is a way to demonstrate how masculine you are. It's kind of funny because it's not the case. And I feel like I brick a lot of people's brains for that reason. And then they see that and they just can't contend with it. Where like in a world where you look more like Ben Shapiro than myself, you want to believe that simply saying the things that Ben Shapiro is saying is going to make you more masculine.
We're talking about sort of how your progressive politics had developed over time. And speaking of your politics, like you have done interviews with AOC, Bernie Sanders, Zohran Mamdani, but also you sat down with figures like Theo Von, and most recently, at least at the time of this conversation, the Nelk brothers,
The Nelk
or the
boys.
Nelk boys, right after they,
The Nelk
right
brothers.
after they had interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was it was something. What's your thought process behind engaging both progressive politicians and people who share similar politics to you, as well as, more conservative or questioning figures like, the Nelk Boys and Theo Von?
So I bracket those guys off as like, I guess, apolitical. Like in the, they represent the median voter quite well, as a matter of fact, especially
Wait,
with how.
you mean you just to pause, you mean you bracket someone like Theo Von more as apolitical, or you consider the Nelk Boys apolitical as well? No, you think they're conservative.
I'm saying
yeah.
that they're conservative, but they're not a mouthpiece for the party in the same way that like the Daily Wire is, or the same way that Charlie Kirk is. So those
Gotcha.
guys are. Nelk is probably at the tail end of this. Like that's the closest to the Daily Wire and the PragerUs of the
Sure.
world. Whereas like the Theo Vons and Andrew Schultz and all of these other podcasts, like they just kind of go along with the wind. And they will find themselves swept away with like right-wing sentiment. I mean, to a certain degree, one might even consider it to be grifting, I guess. But I think it's more so just like someone who doesn't have a well-defined political worldview. The reason why I consider them in a separate category than like the Daily Wires of the world and the Charlie Kirks of the world, the Fox News of the world, is because like those guys are deliberately doing right-wing political propaganda, and their entire job relies on them being a consistent defender of the Republican Party and reactionary thought, whereas a lot of these other podcasters, they will change their attitude. While they command influence and attention within the base of support for the Republican Party, they will change their perspective. As they'll jump ship, I guess, far before any Republican commentator ever would. They're easier to convince, and therefore their audiences are easier to convince.
Is that something you take into account then when sort of like debating these guys or having or like, streaming with them or talking to them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something I take into account.
What is this comment? Is this the guy Hasan who very much... So this is the famous Hasan who LARPs as a leftist but is really a Nazi at this point, much less tame than I heard. Yeah, I mean, you should question why you think I'm a Nazi when my output and things that you hear from my mouth are exactly the diametrical opposite of Nazi beliefs. This should be a moment where you go, you know what? Maybe he's not this person that some random on the internet has presented him as. That's why so many people who come in here and have this kind of attitude just kind of let it. They just say that, and then that's it. They never explain it. They never have a follow up to why they think this way. Beyond here, I unbanned this person because I want to hear what he has to say. So this is the famous Hasan who loves the leftist, but is really a Nazi at this point, much less tame than I've heard. I suspect that if you were to dig deep and try to figure out what my worldview is, you'd find yourself agreeing with a lot more than you disagree with. There's a comment that you read once that lives in my head. Why does mainstream media keep interacting with this guy? It's like they just don't care, or we're wrong about him. I know. And it's really interesting because a lot of people don't just go, maybe this entire community that we've designed, not around real political opinions or anything, and just simply drama, cultivated drama around this person is wrong. And all of these like other educated journalists who have a political opinion might actually be right about him, and we might be wrong about him. But instead of entertaining that notion, I think a lot of people turn around and fantasize even they just like go after even more ridiculous fantasies. Like it's a QAnon style situation where I just have like blackmail on all of these people, whether it be the Twitch CEO or whether it be journalists in all of these other reputable outlets. Or maybe perhaps all these outlets are wrong too, you know? Ladies, as you paid $20K for this NPR interview, that's so funny. That's like when people say I'm on steroids. I take that as that's great. Thank you. Thank you for thinking that I'm competent enough to hire a PR team that is getting me all these media hits. And it's not just like my poor manager who is taking in all of these inbound requests that are coming in for these interviews. Yeah. What's going on with your voice, dude? I made the mistake of drinking alcohol at the age of 34 one time. Yeah, I saw this. I know. Hasan, it doesn't matter how many puff pieces you buy. You will never outrun your own reputation. A Nepo baby, terrorist-loving, America-hating, tanky, degenerate, and womanizing creep. He for sure spends at least $20,000 a month on PR based on my experience. Based on my experience is so funny. Does that mean Ethan is paying $20,000 a month for a PR firm and they just haven't been able to like get him into any of these outlets? Is that what that means? Because goddamn, dude, I think a lot of people around this man are just farming him. They're just basically farming him aggressively for whatever wages they can justify. Every accusation is a confession. I mean, this is literally a confession. According to Taylor Lorenz, he's a meme in journalist circles because he keeps asking for a puff piece. I would give him free ball right now because I obviously have been in these spaces for quite a while. I have a lot of fantastic journalist friends, for example. But I'm not going to do that because there are outlets that you could go to. I'm just not. God, I always love giving ideological enemies good advice for some reason. So I'm not going to do that. That's my New Year's resolution. Using America hating as a position that should be reconsidered tells you everything you need to know. I know this is like Steven Crowder shit, okay? A Nepo baby, Nepo baby is not even something that I hide. You know, I am a nepotism recipient. Shouts out to Uncle Jank. But terrorist loving, America hating, tanky, degenerate, and womanizing creep. It's like, dude, you sound like you're writing for Breitbart. None of this is new. Like this is what I've heard my entire career as a political commentator. It's just, I've never heard it from someone who still tries to cling on to the notion that they are a liberal. Also, womanizing creep is so funny. You hate America. Yeah. Doesn't he still say he's progressive? I don't keep up with him. I just only see every now and then whenever he just like has a moment, has a Hasbara moment on the Hasbara Hate Hasan podcast. That's what the H3 stands for now. Hasbara Hate Hasan. Yeah. I think these guys just don't understand how this stuff works. Like, they can't contend with the reality that there's like a ton of journalists that are in this community, like with regular frequency. You know what I mean? They don't understand that there is a ideological diversity represented even in mainstream institutions. And some of them are like, oh yeah, I want to interview this person. Like, that's it. The Piker Broadcasting Service is, of course, funded by you, the viewers. For you, the viewers. This one is funny too. I don't even know what the critique is here. This is incredible. Hasan at various points refers to himself as a progressive social democrat, NPR for Zoomers. He says that his privilege allows him to do emotional labor of being more patient with people who have regressive or bigoted attitudes. I mean, it's literally true. And I don't say I'm a social democrat. I say my starting point was social democracy. I don't even understand. Like, this is just your failure to understand the point. Why do these guys get so ass mad anytime any of these outlets are like, yeah, we should do they think they can just like harass NPR and NPR journalists into submission. It doesn't work that way. Okay. These aren't like squishy liberal influencer types that are going to get really scared when they see like of brigaded comment sections. These are journalists who already eat that every day. Like they're hardened reporters who have already experienced an endless amount of hatred from the right. So when they see stuff like this, they know exactly what it is. You know, these are people whose ops are the president, and you're over here being like, this guy's bad. How dare you interview this person? It's like, okay, dude, good luck. Anyway. Yeah, Richie Torres is back on his. I know. We'll talk about that. Regarding PR, are you paying Hoscord and Hostwit $20K combined a month, or is it $20K each? I would like to know how much, so I should be requesting. Yeah. Bill me. Hasan, you got so old. That's what happens. You know, time passes, seasons change. And last year I was 33, and this year I'm 34. I think what it's just a part of human nature. I don't know. I don't mean to freak you out, chatter, but you're also getting older every single day, as a matter of fact. Yeah. You just got to, Father Time is undefeated. You just got to make sure that you try and get comfortable in your own skin and age as gracefully as you can. Where were we? Yeah. I am going to get into the news. This guy should start doing political commentary. He knows a lot. Oh, yeah. This guy that was being interviewed, I think he knows a thing or two. Yeah. He's been around the block a couple times. What is this? Someone asked a good question. What's the last time your old brain remembers the world changing to make things better? As recently as Zohran Mamdani's electoral victory in the Democratic primaries in New York, the dramatic attitude change where the Western world populations recognize the cruelty of Israel and the humanity of the Palestinians. These are all things that happen quite fast, as a matter of fact. It took years and years to get here, but the attitude shift almost happened. It's seemingly overnight, as opposed to for however many years there was no movement in the right direction. Yeah. Why doesn't your stream have ads? Because the Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, Skullho, and many others like you. There are no ads on the Piker Broadcasting Service, except sometimes I do take sponsorships for video games, like I will be later tonight.